computer. Okay.
There it is.
Here we go. Today's May 15th. It is 3:02 p.m. And we have the meeting, an administrative meeting of the Nahant Zoning Board of Appeals. And our purpose today is to discuss updates on everything really, and a little bit about our short-term rentals as well. So who would like to get started? Anybody? I will. One thing first. Administratively. So going forward, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take turns writing the decisions. I know sometimes I just take it on because it seems easier to do it, and, but I think what I'll do from now on is I'll send whoever's turn it is, I'll send them the YouTube link for the hearing so they can watch it on their own accord. And the person who drafts the minutes, I think it's easier if you draft the minutes to also do the decision. So, and if somebody has a conflict or is really busy and can't take on that duty, then of course I would do it or someone else could volunteer. But I think we should start taking turns for that. That's all I was going to say about that. Everything else I think is going pretty well. Caitlin, before you joined, I explained that your husband had applied to become on the zoning board. His resume looks great.
How rude, right?
He looks wonderful, yeah. So sent over to Tony, and Tony Barletta is looking at it and thinking about it, I guess, and he may or may not, I don't know if he's going to appoint him, but if he does, then it would go to the selectmen and they would have to officially appoint him, and then he could be a member. And I've asked that if Caitlin could stay on as an alternate, but of course they couldn't be on the same hearing, right? So maybe they could fill in for each other. I don't know, something like that. We'll figure something out.
Sounds good.
But are you feeling okay, Caitlin? Feeling good?
I'm good. I'm 33 weeks this week, so I'm like ready to be done, but I'm good. And Cameron, my husband, is like very much involved in Massachusetts real estate law, and like even before I started on the ZBA was wanting to do this. So then when I did it, he was like, I can't believe you're in the ZBA. That's what I wanted to do. So I've been really fortunate to have the experience for a couple of years, but I said to him all along, like, please, I'm sure it will be great for your business and for you. So he's taking me off.
Have we found a way to like use Facebook or something to advertise for a couple of more alternates? Is that something that can be done?
Yeah, I imagine. I don't see why not. Does the town have a Facebook page?
I have no idea.
Well, I don't know. One's a neighbors, one's a resident. I'm not sure how they run.
Yeah, I don't know which one. I never knew which one, if I should join one or not. I wasn't sure about.
I would think it would be most appropriate to first have it be publicized on the town's website first, just so nobody can suggest we're bypassing that.
Right. I did suggest that to Tony. I asked him if maybe Diane could place an ad or something. And he said, I think he said yes. So she's
okay. Well,
going to put that out there. But that's in the works. That was last week. I wrote to him about that. So
all right.
So has anybody had a chance to look at the short-term rental materials?
Yes.
I looked at them.
Yeah, I've read them 2 or 3 times.
What do you think, Dave? You're the one who asked for this meeting. Tell us.
Well, it's very obvious the citizens petition is so I use the word tailored. I understand, what they're trying to do, but when I look at them both, I think the one from the town's board makes more sense. It's more structured, and I think I like the idea of having a special permit for non-owner occupied properties, in my opinion. But interested what other people think of that.
I think it makes sense. I do think, though, we're going to have to think about procedures, because we don't do things like this currently, at least in my experience. So we ought to think about whether we should generate some new forms, and for that matter, what would the fee be for somebody to bring an application to us for this action? Because there's currently an appellate fee.
Doesn't the citizens petition kind of provide some like outlines as to what would be required in order to seek the approval?
It provides standards, things that we're supposed to consider. But the current forms that the zoning office has just has to do with appeals of denials of building permits, which is our bread and butter, of course. So it would seem to me to make sense to consider generating a form that would be available to people who are looking for the special permit of the kind that's now to be provided for, is contemplated here.
Yeah, that makes
So-
sense.
Yeah, and I think it would make sense to include in it those elements that are recited in the proposed new bylaw, telling people that, you know, we need a written submission that addresses all of these things, because we're going to have to consider it sooner or later. So it doesn't make any sense not to give the applicant time to prepare that sort of thing and put it before us, so that simplifies our procedure.
You know, Michael, I was thinking that when I read that information, that really the rules and regulations that they're going to put together will most likely have the form be a form, would be our opportunity to maybe add the form at that point, because the rules and regulations haven't been drafted for it yet.
Well, I understand that. Those are the selectmen's rules, and I don't know that the selectmen either have the lawful authority or are contemplating taking the action to provide the forms and so forth. Maybe they do, and maybe that'll make sense. But if they're going to, I think it makes sense that we have some input, so that, because we're the ones that are going to have to deal with it. You know, we don't want to make it any more complicated than it needs to be. And I don't think it needs. I don't think it needs to be very complicated, but I think it does make sense to have there be a form that applicants can fill out that causes them to give us the information that's specified in the points that Caitlin just mentioned.
Do you think you want to do the first draft of that?
Sure.
Well, I think we have to wait till see which one gets approved at the meeting,
Sure.
because this meeting is not going to be highly attended. There's not much out there other than this. And my guess is that the citizens group that has written this will probably make sure they've got a large number of contingents to vote on it. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if the citizen one actually passes. Even though it's being taken up second, somebody could make an appointment to table it and take up the other one, or somebody could ask for the citizens one to be taken first at the meeting. And that would be up to the moderator to decide that.
Okay.
But with a 75-person quorum, I don't think you're going to see more than 75 people or 80 people at this meeting.
I
There's
actually,
just
I thought they
nothing
were,
else there.
I thought they were very similar. They're actually what the really intent, except for the special permit piece.
Special permit, right? It's a big difference.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then if you take out the special permit piece, and if you take out the requirement of the rules and regulations, which I thought the citizen petition kept kind of alluding to a lot of rules and regulations which haven't been developed yet.
Right.
So, you know, if you take those two pieces out, I thought they're very similar myself. But I think it's a good thing. I don't know, I live on Little Nahant, and I can tell you, we get so sick and tired of the people coming and going all the time. Every time we look out the window, there's another person we never saw before. There's another person we never saw. Who's that dog? We never saw that dog before. You know, it's all day long, every day.
So, I think it's important to note that we're not administering the enforcement of the short-term rental rules that are made. Like the zoning board's role, from what my reading of it and how the zoning board sort of functions generally, right, is to decide whether it's appropriate to grant them a special permit for that use.
That's it.
And I don't actually think that requires its own form. Like, we are already the entity that decides whether special permits are to be granted in other scenarios. So it's really just another box to be checked. Now, when there's this deluge at the beginning of all these applications, is there like a supplementary form or reference to the rules that we asked him to give out? But I don't think kind of creating a totally separate process or fee structure is really appropriate. I think it can fit into the sort of existing structure there. Again, with some, it's good to help smooth things along, but I don't see it as a drastic change in sort of what our function is.
I don't see it as a drastic change. I'm just talking about simplifying it because right now, if the first option, the committee created provision passes, then there will be a number of people who are going to need special permits. And if they want to apply to us for a special permit, the only form that they have to do that is a form that is used to appeal a denial of a building permit. And that's not, that's designed for other purposes. One could scratch things out and write in some other things, but it would be sort of homemade in each case to adapt the existing form to the new purpose.
Maybe what we could do is, we could talk about it when the time comes, but maybe what we could do is just use the first page and then at the bottom, for short-term rental special permit, only this page is necessary, something along those lines, make it, word it better, but and just use the first page and have an extra box like Max said. We can figure something out. Wait and see, I guess, what happens, right? On Saturday. I think it's I don't know, I like the idea of getting some kind of an authorization because we're gonna have strangers coming in and,
How about that 4% cap? Like that conceptually makes sense and the numbers seem pretty reasonable. But how is that
Well,
That's a good-
monitored and
that's a
how
good
is that
question.
enforced, I guess?
That's a good question. Well, actually,
that's 64 houses.
yeah, I think the selectmen will determine what the absolute number is, and then they're going to provide some sort of permission to the existing operators of Airbnbs. So that I assume that they will keep a tally. I've forgotten what it is that they issue to those who operate these things, but there's some provision that they have to. I think that operators have to register with them, so they'll keep a tally of that. And presumably that will not be our job to monitor.
So when we go to issue a special permit, the number of previously issued special permits is not relevant. It's more about administratively, are they 64 active or not? That's your take on that?
My take on it is that in order to apply for a special permit, somebody will have to have the permission or the registration that the selectmen provide for. And if they don't have that, they won't be eligible for a special, or let's put it this way, if we issue a special permit, it will not be valid to operate an Airbnb unless they have already registered and are within the cap of 64.
Because if you take 4% of 1,600 houses, which is approximately 1,600 households in Nahant, right?
Yep.
So that's 64. And
Right.
according to the documents that were provided to us to review in the FinCom book, there's 47 registered right now with the Department of Revenue in Nahant.
Right.
And not all
Now-
of those will need special permits, only some of them.
Correct.
That's if the bylaw as written by that committee,
Yep.
Passes.
First one.
the first one,
Right. And if the citizens petition passes, we won't have any special permit process.
Right.
correct.
Right. Okay. I think we're okay either way. I think we might have a slight deluge at the beginning, but even if all 47 people needed it, we could do, this is something we can do pretty quickly. We could probably do 10 or 20 at a time, I think, right? Can't be that hard.
Well, but I mean, the comment that you just made about the reception in the surrounding neighborhood suggests to me that these will be, in some cases, very hotly contested. And they are very discretionary with us. So I think we should expect to get some heat from the neighborhood, however we decide in many of these cases.
It's possible. You're right.
Because I don't know if you saw the list with all the names of the people that signed it.
No.
There, where they actually signed the petition, and you look at the addresses. I was surprised at the number of them that are down on Maple Avenue, which is a highly congested area. I mean,
Where is Maple Avenue?
off of Castle near the
Yeah.
school.
Yep.
Oh,
And the signatures down there were probably at least 8 or 10 signatures on that street alone saying, you know, they like the idea of doing this. There's no parking. If you get into that thing, because I have a couple of customers that I pick up down there and you can barely get a car down there half the time.
Yeah, parking is one of the factors that's listed in the tally of things that we're supposed to consider in approving a special permit. But of course, it does not apply to an owner-occupied operation.
That's true.
But you've got an owner there who can move his car in or out. So hopefully that would alleviate that situation.
Dave, did you get a sense from those signatures that these were people who were, if you will, long-term residents, or could they have been people who bought in for the purpose of operating these things?
I would say most of them were long-term people living here.
Right.
Some have more than one property. But you know, but as far as I know, they live in town. Nothing jumped out at me as like you know, some operation out of New York or something that's, you know, if it's grabbed a couple of houses. And I know that's part of what people are worried about. Somebody coming in and just buying properties, you know, because they got plenty of money and then say,
Well, apparently
know.
that's been a problem. It's been recognized and there's been concern about it in some other communities.
yeah. And it was a concern in our town too. I mean, one of them got shut down, but
Shut down how?
because he was running a business, running weddings and things like that
Oh, yeah.
without permits.
Commercial
So-
operations, right?
Right, and so that's not allowed anyways. But I don't think we're gonna know a lot really till one or the other passes.
Yeah.
What we're gonna, because one of the things that when I read through this, is anybody, if we do the special permit for non-owner operated, who does decide the structure, the fee structure?
Right now it's $400, you know, without the ad, and they have to pay for their advertisement as well.
Well,
Mhm.
$400 for an appeal, and that
Right.
may or may not apply to this process. Because
but-
it's technically not an appeal. No one will have denied the applicant anything, so it's arguable whether or not something that comes before us in this sense will actually qualify as an appeal. Now, you know, you could charge somebody $400, but they might take that to court.
It
And
may,
is it, and the other question then, is that a yearly fee? Or is that a one-time fee to
So it's
continue?
one time to us, but then there'll be a yearly fee for their registration, which,
Right.
you know, is not zoning related. It's a one-time go to zoning unless there's unless the changes ownership. And then after that, you know, that's not to do with us. That's the administration of these, which, you know, they'll find out is harder than they realize, but,
Mm. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, what's her name, Catherine Sherber's expecting a lot more work out of this.
so I think I explained to everyone at the last, I don't know if Max, you weren't on, but at the last meeting, and we talked about this real briefly, that I had suggested that to Tony that we eliminate 35-day wait period for this purpose. Because as you know, because our bylaws say that we are supposed to have other boards review our applications, we have, the 40A says, if you have that in your bylaws, it has to be 35 days. And so I said, can we eliminate it for this purpose? But and town council and they decided not to do that because they felt that it would be, someone else is gonna come along and say, well, you're gonna eliminate the 35 days for them, why can't you eliminate it for me? That kind of thing. So they're not gonna do that.
But who makes that decision?
I imagine it would be,
Well, it's somebody
gotta
who's responsible for the bylaw. I mean,
Right.
the zoning bylaw could modify the procedure that pertains to these special permits as distinct from those that apply to denial of building permits.
Right, and I thought it would be great, but I mean, it's a lot of towns, people can apply for a special permit or a variance even. And they can get it on the next calendar, because they don't have that 35-day wait period. But I guess it's not gonna really matter.
So you're saying that's a town ordinance? The 35
No.
day
It's in the
The
bylaw.
35 days is in our bylaws.
in the bylaw?
And
But there's
well,
there is no bylaw right now for this subject,
right,
But it's in
right,
the zoning by,
right?
Yep, but the point is, the only options are the current state of affairs or passing these actions on town meeting floor. So there's not really much chance to modify the zoning bylaw unless there's a special town meeting.
or if you change it on the floor of this town meeting, but
That's true.
so Jocelyn, I'm curious about that. Did they say that, like, if we added in language into the zoning bylaw that said, special permits for
we have a poll. Go ahead.
a period, did they advise that that's not a good idea to put into the bylaw, or do they advise to not do it just on the, without it being in the bylaw?
You mean the 35-day thing?
Yeah,
I think what they said was, what Dan said was that, if we put that in there, if we eliminate it for this purpose, applicants for, say, regular special permits and variances would want to have it eliminated for them as well.
yeah, but it would have been specifically eliminated for just this purpose in the bylaw. I think that's overly cautious, but
Right, and isn't the argument like, okay, but that's not the way we have the bylaws written currently, so it's gonna have to come up the next time and you can raise that like when it, yeah.
exactly, yeah. But I mean, on the merits of it, if these are, again, if they're important and they have the potential for the neighbors to be concerned about them, maybe the 35 days are warranted, like give the planning board an opportunity to
Call from name unavailable.
to weigh in, or the health department, like if there truly
Call
are
from
issues to be
name
looked at, right?
unavailable.
Jocelyn dropped off. Oh, there she is. Okay.
No, I'm coughing,
Call
sorry. I have a
from
cold.
name unavailable.
But
Is somebody's phone ringing?
So I think, did you try to call in separately, Jocelyn? Did you try
No.
to telephone in?
No.
All right,
oh, that was my phone. I'm sorry,
all right.
but I don't answer it, so I didn't notice it.
Well, part of the question is, when it comes to a special permit of the ordinary kind that's involved in Wayne's denial of a building permit, there may be some angles on the building that, let's say, the Concom or the planning board may have some specific statutory or providential input on. But when it comes to this kind of special permit, I don't see any provision for input by other boards and committees. And in fact, if they went to submit something, I'm not even sure that we'd be authorized to consider it. So that's, that's another argument to do away with the 35 days.
But it might also be helpful in a way though, because at least initially, so we get the handle on doing them. But it might be helpful if, for example, the Board of Health, because they get a copy of our applications. If there's something about that particular property that they'd want us to know, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there, I don't know. But right now, that's where it stands, I just want you all to know. So, if anybody wants to make it, like a floor amendment, I guess they could do that.
Well, my sense is it was noted in the warrant book that this is not expected to be the final word on this process, that it's expected that this will evolve over later, with longer experience in later town meetings. So I don't think we need to consider what happens here to be all that final. I think it'll be an interim provision.
What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I also know that, particular party is really pushing to get this passed because he's got four apartments empty on a building that he just spent $2.5 million on.
Is that
So-
Viviano?
Yeah.
Who is it?
Is he behind the citizens petition?
He's big time.
99.9% sure. But you know, he's also on the planning board. So
Who's this person?
Steve
Steve
Viviano.
Oh, okay.
What's the
and he owns
location?
property around the corner from you too.
I know
What's
him.
the
I know of him. I
Yeah.
just don't. I don't
What's the location that you just referred to?
The one in
Dave?
Mitchell's Corner,
Oh, yeah.
the big building that he just redid.
Wow.
Yeah, he's doing something across the street from my house too.
Yeah, I'm not against the Airbnb. I just want to make that clear too. I mean, I think it's a great thing. People need to make money with their property. They should be able to do that. You know, it's just sometimes it's just, I just didn't expect it when I moved in there. You know, we sit on our front porch usually after dinner at night if it's good weather and just see other people go by. And it's just kind of weird. If you think you know your neighbors, you can always tell the Airbnbers because they're walking around with backpacks on, first of all. Because who wears a backpack to go for a walk in their own neighborhood? Nobody, right? Or they're walking around with a phone and they don't know which direction to go. So no big problem with them. I've never had any big issues with anyone. It seems to work out okay.
I don't think we even have them in our neighborhood, so
Mm.
I don't see
Well,
any
I've-
changes.
I've
Here-
used Airbnbs while traveling and they play a valuable role. I think part of the problem is that in communities like this, the expectation for years and years and years and years has been that it would be a stable community of largely single family dwellings. And, there's a lot of pressure to change that, not just in this regard, but also in regard to what they call accessory dwelling units.
Mhm. Yeah, the ADUs, right.
Yep.
Well, anybody else
If
want to
it-
raise any other points?
And if you read all the stuff on Facebook, it gets very confusing because there are people mixing in that with affordable housing,
Yeah.
and which are totally separate issues.
Yeah.
And it makes it, well, if we allow this, then we could have, 30 more units of affordable housing, and then, well, where does that come in?
Yeah.
It's weird.
So the other thing I wanted to point out was that Dan had mentioned to me when I asked him about this, how this got started. I guess in 4.06 of our zoning bylaws, there's a that's where they started from in terms of the town's meeting and how that was developed. And that's our rooming and lodging section, which was, I guess, drafted many, many years ago so that people who worked at GE would have a place to stay, when they were, and maybe they lived elsewhere in the state, but they would come here and stay during the week with families. I guess that was the thing back then.
Mhm.
David, you were probably here then. What happened? Is that true?
Yeah, when GE started, yes. Mike, Dan has mentioned that to me also, and he does say, 4.06 really is the controlling factor in this whole thing. And he said, you can make decisions that will stand just because of your board that, courts aren't even going to get involved with. Ultimately, you have control over your own town and what you want to do. So,
All right.
Subject to peoples with pitchforks and torches coming and burning down your house.
I guess that's possible. But
So you think that the Airbnbs, are they happening on Big Nahant at all? They must be.
Yeah.
oh yeah, they are. Sure.
And
Sure.
because of we have these events places, but we don't have any hotels. That's why I think, another reason I think it's a good thing to have it.
Yeah.
But the bylaw expressly excludes, doing events. Like Dave said, there was somebody who was doing it, who was shut down.
I
Right.
think Jocelyn's
But
point
we
is that we
have-
have like Ocean View, and,
Right.
like the country club that have showers, weddings, whatever.
Yeah.
I always felt like that was tough because if you're going to have those great spaces that do bring in like revenue to the town, and then people do want a place to stay. So
Mhm.
I'm always like thinking of, it might be good to have better taxable income to support schools, and we just don't have a lot of it here either. So if this could be another source of it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the person who owns the Ocean View bought the first house along the ocean
Yeah,
on the other side of the, on the same side of the ocean. He owns that now too. His main purpose of doing that is to use it for people coming for weddings or whatever else.
yeah,
Right, I think that the sense of unease about these provisions, these Airbnbs, is that the pressure exerted by investor realtors will drive up prices to be able to capitalize on that market and make the town generally more unaffordable for working people.
Possible. I'd like to see that there be some pretty good regulations in place that if there's a problem, that the owner is accessible or a property manager, one or the other. Because that,
yeah, that
whoever's,
makes sense.
yeah, someone has to be held accountable. You can't have somebody having a wild party and not be able to reach anyone.
Right.
So,
Well, that's part of the criteria that are set forth in the selectmen's provision
yes,
that, or I'm sorry, in the zoning bylaw, draft zoning bylaw, that we're going to have to consider for each one of these non-owner occupied operations.
right.
But it's gonna be interesting, if a non-owner operator comes in to us for a permit and the abutter across the street and beside it is vehemently against it, is that gonna be the decision maker?
Well, that's what I was talking about before. That's why we're going to be in a real hot seat, because there's definitely going to be situations like that where people have a reasonable business proposition and somebody in the neighborhood is dug in their heels and comes at it with barrels blazing, saying, no, it's going to ruin my life.
Yep. Or who's gonna call the cops every hour, every time somebody's there?
Right.
Make life miserable for them or whatever. Those things are coming, so.
But aren't we gonna have like more like a checklist that says, oh, what's your relationship to Nahant? Wasn't that the whole purpose of it, was to make sure we got operators who had a connection to Nahant?
Yeah, it's definitely a factor there, yeah.
Mhm.
I actually thought that was a funny piece in there, like that part of the review is the person's connection to Nahant. Like, I think you could see people taking some exception with that particular criteria.
Okay, so 406A, item number 3, is the ability of the property owner or agent / property manager to respond to complaints within a timely manner. That's the ability.
Mhm.
Number 8 is prior and or current experience with the town, including but not limited to previous or temporary residency, family residency, business properties or services, and other community involvement, which addresses the factor you just mentioned, Jocelyn. So that's a if you will, taking the temperature of the connection of the owner, the non-resident owner, to the town. So that is a factor that we will be empowered to consider. And, with 9 or 8 or 9 plus factors, we're going to have a lot of things that we're going to have to weigh, and
You have to- I
a
have
lot
to-
of room for people to be unhappy with what we decide.
Yeah, you've convinced me to vote for the citizens petition.
Well, the other aspect of that now is there anything that says this has to be a 4/5 supermajority?
That is
It's-
an excellent question.
It's not an appeals.
Every zoning decision, I think, is a 4/5, and I don't agree that there's a distinction between the appeals and not, as much as Michael does. Most of the things some things that we issue it's not always about a denial of a building permit. It's really seeking relief And I think in some of the trainings, we've been told that it's not always the appropriate process to make someone get denied and then come. You really can just seek the relief that you have deemed that you need without it being an appeal. Because you're not really appealing the decision. You can completely agree that you need the relief, just seeking seeking the relief. The Board of Appeals is itself a little bit of a misnomer. It's not really just appeals. People are justifiably seeking relief that we have the ability to grant.
Your point is that somebody who knows they have a non-conforming property and they know that they need something different in order to build on it or do the change they make, might not even apply to Wayne for a building permit. They might simply come to us directly first off. And I've never thought of that because we never see it, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
Well, Jocelyn, while you were off the air, I mentioned, does any decision we make regarding this have to be a 4/5 supermajority?
You know, I don't know what the vote percentage has to be for this.
Yeah, I think that needs to be in the bylaw,
Right?
whether it's just a simple majority.
It's just a use special permit, though. It's not actually a new thing. So whatever use special permits require, this requires.
You're right.
Which is 4/5.
Right.
Okay.
That may even be in a statute as opposed to our bylaws. I don't know.
Correct, Michael. I think it is in the statute. You know, I gotta tell you something too, is last Monday I went to the REBA conference, the Real Estate Bar Association conference. And I took a class while I was there on mergers and infectious invalidity. It was really cool.
Can you say that again? What is that called?
Mergers of what?
Mergers and infectious invalidity.
Wow. It
Okay.
sounds like you need a shot.
But weirdly, I have 3 cases that are around this whole topic. So I was so excited to be there.
Mergers of what?
Mergers and infectious invalidity.
Yeah, but mergers of what?
Land.
You mean
Lots.
two adjoining properties?
Yes, adjoining
Oh,
lots.
okay.
Mhm. It was really cool. Matter of fact, I thought it was, I spoke about it at this morning's meeting here at the firm. It was pretty cool, but it kind of really brought home to me a case we had last year before us where a Nahant resident had come to us and had on their own accord taken their lot on Little Nahant and had a plan drawn up and then went and filed it with the land court. I remember saying to them, you can't make a lot by just drawing it on the ground. I mean, a piece of paper, you have to actually get the zoning approval. And something being stamped A&R has nothing to do with zoning. It only means that the planning board has said that approval is not required. So, but this infectious invalidity says that if you have a lot, say you have 2 lots next to each other, and you carve off a piece of one, and you keep one conforming and one non-conforming, it could be that the non-conforming lot you can never build on, right? And that non-conforming lot can infect the conforming lot. And there's all kinds of cases on it. It's very
Make
interesting.
it non-buildable?
Correct. I'll send you guys the cases on it and see if you're interested in looking at it. It's kind of a FYI. I was gonna send it to you anyway, but I thought I'd tell you first. You might think I'm crazy. You get all this stuff. I'll keep it to just one case and then a little description.
Max, we could talk about it Thursday night.
Yeah, no Thursday night. Yeah. So, all right. Do we have anything else?
I'm a little late for 3:30, so
Okay, go
it's
ahead.
hard to jump, but I'm gonna have to soon.
All right. Anybody else have anything you want to mention?
Let's see what happens Saturday and how it impacts us.
All right. I was supposed to go to New York this Saturday, but I'll be there.
I'm out of town, but keep me posted. We might come back. We're just supposed to be driving to Rhode Island to visit my parents, but where this is the last thing on the agenda, we were like, maybe we'll come back for it. So, see.
I'll see you all
It'll
there.
probably come up by 2:30.
Okay, that's good to know. We were trying to figure
Because-
out when it might.
Because the rest of the stuff's gonna fly through,
Yeah.
Especially with the clickers now.
Yeah, nobody
That's-
cares.
That's good to know. Yeah.
Nobody cares.
All right. Thanks all.
All right. So we have a
All
motion.
right.
to
Take
adjourn?
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Now.
Motion is adjourned.
Thank you.
Yes. Adopted by acclamation.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.